And then once we did Curb, 0 notes. HBO never gave a note.
Never.
There was only one time that I was like, all right, he's gone too far.
Hi, this is Chazz Palminteri. Welcome to the Chazz Palminteri Show. Every Monday at 11 o'clock, I have a great new guest all the time. Well, not every Monday. Sometimes we do solo episodes. I just want to remind you, don't forget, if you want to come and see my one-man show, go to chazzpalminteri.net. And John, let's just tell the audience where I'm going to be.
So starting in 2025, February 13th, you're going to be in Englewood, New Jersey at the Bergen Pack. February 15th, you're going to be in West Long Branch, New Jersey at the Monmouth University. February 16th, you're going to be in Huntington, New York at the Paramount Theater. And February 21st, you're going to be in Tarrytown, New York at the Tarrytown Music Hall.
Absolutely. Don't forget, chazzpalminteri.net. Don't forget my merchandise. I mean, come on, Christmas is here now. Christmas. You want to get something for your wife? The saddest thing in life is wasted talent. You know, I got those shirts. Is your wife one of the great ones? Buy one of those. Or she could buy it for you. So many great things happening. Don't forget my cigars and my wine. You believe this? I sound like one of those guys on an Irish salesman over here. My cigars, my wine. My cigars were rated number 8 in the country. The wine, Chazz Palminteri wine. Go to Paul.
LCGcigars.com.
LCGcigars.com. My partner, Paul DeSilvio, one of the great cigar makers ever. Now, let's get to my guest. I've been trying to get her for a long time, but she's always busy. She's hilarious. She was a stand-up comic, used to tear the house down. She's done 100 things, but the thing you know her for, and the thing she became like this icon, seriously, is Curb Your Enthusiasm. She is funny, she's hysterical, and she's a great actress. You know, being funny is hard. You know, Edmund Kean, the great actor, said on his deathbed when they said to him, dying must be so hard. And he looked at them and said, dying is easy, comedy's hard. So comedy is hard. My guest, Susie Essman. Susie, how are you?
I'm good. Those are all great theaters you're going to play in.
Oh, yeah. Did you do those?
Some of them I've done, yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, Susie, I have to say, people just love you. I had to keep people away from here. My wife, her girlfriends were just dying to come here.
You know, in my wildest dreams, I never thought in my life that I was going to become beloved for telling people to go f themselves. And that's what's happened. It's like, you know, my grandmother used to say, it's an old Yiddish proverb, you make plans and God laughs. And that's kind of what happened. I never planned on this, but here we are.
Now, when you did the show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, when you first did it, did you think it was going to run a long time? No, it was when Larry first hired me, and you know, we were talking before we started about you were saying you were dying to be on it, you would have done it for free. We all basically did it for free in the beginning. In the first few seasons, I got day scale. I mean, nobody was making money. We had the lowest budget. It was just, we didn't even have trailers. Wow.
We didn't have trailers. We had no dressing rooms. It was all location, and we just find a corner, put on your makeup, change in front of everybody. It was one of those things. It was like, I got a barn, let's do a show. That's what it felt like.
Wow.
And so the first few seasons, after every season, Larry would say, that's it. I'm not doing it again. I'm done. I'm finished. And I didn't have a contract. I was a day player, guest star. I never knew if we were coming back. I never knew if he was going to bring me back. It was very precarious. And here we are now, 24 years later, 12 seasons later. It worked out.
12 seasons.
Yeah.
But this was the last one. That's it.
This is definitely the last one. Yeah.
Okay. But before we get into like a Curb, it's like, tell me, you grew up where?
Well, I was born in the Bronx.
You were born in the Bronx,
I was born in the Bronx.
Wow.
And then we moved to Mount Vernon. I grew up in Mount Vernon, which, as you know, is right next to the Bronx.
Yes,
it's like Bronx North.
Bronx North.
But my grandmother lived on 161st in Jerome, right across from the stadium. So I spent a lot of time there when I was growing up.
You're a big Yankee fan.
Big Yankee fan.
I know that.
Big Yankee. Well, she lived right across. I mean, that was, you know, the stadium was like the Taj Mahal when I was growing up.
Yes.
I would sit out on the fire escape and I would just look at it. You know, it was such a majestic place.
Yes.
And my grandfather always had the TV on with the game on, and they never took me because I was a girl.
Right.
They never took me to a game. So now I go to a lot. But yeah, I went to SUNY Purchase. I was not a theater major. I was too intimidated by all the theater majors.
And that's a great theater school.
It's a great theater school, but I was too scared. All the theater majors in my day, they'd be like, the guys with the white scarf around their neck, the type,
right.
carrying around an attaché case, and they were so pretentious, and I was intimidated by them. But then when I graduated college, the only thing I wanted to do was act. And acting, look, I did the same thing you did, but in a different direction. I realized that nobody's calling me and that I would have to come up with my own thing. And so I became a comic. That's how I became a comic, because I couldn't stand waiting for the phone to ring.
So you just made your own work.
Yeah, I made my own work. And when you're a comic, you could always work.
Always.
There's always a club. And this was the 80s when comedy was king in New York City.
Yes.
1983 I started. Catch a Rising Star. It was very hot in those days. And it was a great, that's where I met Larry. I met Larry at the bar at Catch a Rising Star, where he used to sit at the bar and tell me all his tales of woe about his dating life. And all that became George Costanza storylines.
Yes.
Then I would see the show and be like, he told me that at the bar 5 years ago.
Wow. So people always said that George Costanza was Larry.
Yeah, he was.
He was.
Yeah, he was based on Larry.
It was based on Larry.
But Jason Alexander, who played George, would get the scripts and he would read these things and he would say, oh, this is ridiculous. This never happened to anybody. And Larry would say, it happened to me.
Wow.
The strangest things would happen to him.
Wow. Yeah, like, you get fired and then go back.
Then go back. That happened to him. He was on SNL as a writer.
Right.
And he was pissed off that his sketches never got on. It's very competitive there. And he just, one day he went into, maybe it was Dick Ebersol, I forgot who it was.
Yeah.
And he stormed out and he said, I quit. And then he went home and Kenny Kramer was his neighbor. He lived in Manhattan Plaza on 43rd Street in a studio apartment. And Kenny Kramer said, well, just go back on Monday. And that was what Kramer was based on. Go back on Monday, pretend it never happened. And he did that. That's what he did. So that became a George storyline.
That's just amazing, But so you knew Larry back then.
Yeah, he was a stand-up. And he was brilliant. He had the most brilliant material, but he never understood how to connect to an audience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I heard from people. That he would say, he would get up there and go, no, not today.
That's what he would do.
Fuck this. And
or he'd be killing, but one woman would look at her watch and he'd storm off.
Wow.
He just didn't have that.
Yeah.
I don't want to say pandering. It's not pandering.
Yeah.
We were opposite because I was all about connection.
Yeah.
And he was all about material. And I was never about material. I was always about connection. Yeah.
Wow. So you have any brothers or sisters?
I had two sisters. When my oldest sister died, and a brother.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And anybody else in show business in your family but you?
My little sister is a Broadway producer.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
and a company manager. And she's very, Wicked is her show and The Outsiders.
Wow.
And she's very successful. Yeah.
Wow.
But I come from a showbiz family, kind of, because my great-grandfather was the impresario of the Russian Grand Opera Company. And they were all opera singers and these crazy Russian bohemians,
Wow.
Yeah.
You find out these things. I found out like something about that. My great grandfather was like this poet, and he, it was kind of weird.
But then they come here and they got to make a living.
And then they got to make a living.
But he was in silent films with Lon Chaney.
Wow.
Yeah, my great grandfather, and he was in Yiddish theater on the Lower East Side.
And you know what's funny about? It's always like comics. They're either Jewish or a lot of Jewish and Italian comics. A lot of Jewish and Italian. I should say a lot of Jewish comics. They're just funny.
You know what I think it is, though, Chazz? But Italians too. I mean, there's so many, Pat Cooper, there's so many great Italian comics. But I think in the early days, it was the immigrant experience.
You know what? You're right.
And it was the outsider looking in and seeing the American culture from a different point of view that maybe Americans didn't see it as that.
Yes.
Yes.
I love comedy. To me, and this is just my opinion, and people will dispute that. To me, the greatest comic I ever saw was Pryor.
Pryor, me too. I agree.
Really?
I totally
Because
agree.
Richard, I mean, he just did things that, before that, it was jokes. And
Right.
then he started talking about his life and pain and
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
And
And he was so, the reason why Pryor was so, besides the fact that he was brilliantly funny, he was just naturally funny, but he ripped his heart out.
ripped his heart out.
You saw, all the pain and all the anguish, but he made it funny, and he told stories, he did jokes, he
Right.
did characters, he did everything.
He did everything. He did, and so to me, I always go by people who broke ground.
Yeah.
Who made something different, who took it up another level.
Yeah.
You
remember seeing that first theater piece he did?
forget it.
It was a piece of genius.
That show, I swear on my mother and father, if I'm lying, they passed away. God bless your mom and dad. I felt people were falling into the aisle laughing. People had to stand up.
Yeah.
People were standing up. I
Never
was
saw anything
crying.
like it. Never saw
I
anything
never
like
seen
it.
anything like that.
He actually was a huge influence on me. Because when I was growing up, what did we see? We watched the Ed Sullivan Show on Sunday nights, and you saw Alan King and Jackie Mason.
Right.
They were funny.
Funny.
But they were up there telling jokes.
Jokes.
And Joan Rivers, all of them, they were telling jokes. And that's what they did. And I thought they were funny, but I didn't connect to that. It didn't
Right.
feel like anything I wanted to do. Then the first time I saw Pryor, it was like, oh, I could do something different.
Right.
I could
exactly.
tell stories.
I could tell stories.
I could be characters. I could do different
Right.
kinds of things. And then I had never been in a comedy club. I went out to LA to visit my cousin, and he took me to the Comedy Store. And Pryor was there workshopping his next special. So he was, working material.
Yes.
I didn't know that that's how it worked. I thought you had to have everything all set. And then I
yeah.
saw, here's this brilliant guy. Some things were dying. Some things were not working.
Yeah.
Some things were like almost working, but not quite. And I was
Right.
like, oh, I see. You work it.
Yes.
You work it.
You
I didn't
work it.
understand that. So he was a huge influence on me. I don't know that I would have become a comic if not for him.
Really?
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's because before, it was like people just think they get up there and they're funny for 20 minutes. It's like, especially when they do an hour show, they're doing that a year. That's a
Yeah.
year of working that stuff out.
Yeah.
And Robin Williams was a friend of mine, and I loved Robin. I thought he was brilliant and great. But just different than Pryor.
Very different. Well, he was so quick. He had a
Yeah.
different kind of brain. I sometimes think about Robin. I wonder, because his brain fired on
Yes.
at a different speed and a different wavelength.
Like you couldn't believe it.
And the fact that he ended up with this neurological condition
Yeah.
makes me wonder if there wasn't some weird, some
Maybe.
connection.
Maybe. But he was a brilliant
Yeah.
mind and so funny. I mean, I remember I was sitting down and we were having dinner with him, and somebody just walked over and said, and this is when Michael Jackson got in trouble, and he said, they said to us, hey, did you hear about it? Michael Jackson could go to jail. And at the dinner table, Robin goes, Michael Jackson in prison? And did 15 minutes of Michael Jackson in prison, where people were just
Rolling. Yeah, he was very facile,
like
very quick.
talking about moonwalking into Bubba. The things he was saying
Yeah.
were hysterical, and I was like, and I directed him in a movie, and he's a wonderful actor.
A
too.
terrific, great dramatic actor.
A great dramatic
But
actor.
I will tell you this, when we were all at Catch a Rising Star, when he would come in, to workshop stuff,
Right.
nobody wanted to go on in front of him because this is just how his brain worked. If I did a bit, somebody did a bit, the next night he'd be on Letterman, you'd hear your bit.
Really?
Now, not that he was stealing, because he was not a thief. He was just so absorbent. Like he just absorbed everything and then just came out.
And it just came out.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, getting back to Curb, they always say Curb. They call it. You like Curb?
Yeah.
And just recently, I went to my family. We went to we went to the place in Hollywood. It was in Beverly Hills, where we ordered some kind of. You had it on the thing, but it was a makeup name. They said, "Oh, you saw Curb." There was a cheese that you did a bit.
Oh, Vanderdonk.
Vanderdonk. Vanderdonk. That's it. So my wife and I swim. We go up there. We want. Yeah, could you? We want the Vanderdonk. And she said, "Excuse me." I said, "Vanderdonk, the cheese, the Vanderdonk." She goes, everybody from Curb has been coming there asking for that.
That was the cheese that he left in my refrigerator and I ate.
And you ate, right. Right. Now, did you find, Susie, that because some people say it, I don't believe it, but I think there's just more of male comics than female. That's why people feel that way. Some people go, women are just not funny.
Yeah.
And I disagree.
I've heard that.
Yeah. No, I disagree with that. They go, because I love Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
I thought she was very funny.
Well, she's brilliant.
Brilliant Joan Rivers.
But, when I was coming up, when I was a kid, who was it? There was Joan.
Yeah, back then, yeah.
There was Phyllis. There was Toadie.
That's about it.
That was about it. Jean Carroll. There was others, and then there was comedic actresses like Ann Mira, Carol Burnett. Burnett was a big influence on me. I used to watch that show and just think they looked like they were having so much fun on that show, But they were all self-deprecating. I mean, Phyllis, who was a beautiful woman, had to dress up in those crazy outfits. And Joan was always about how ugly she was and fat thighs. And I feel and she wasn't. She was adorable.
Yes.
And I feel as though it was a generational thing that they had to be self-deprecating. Otherwise, the audiences wouldn't have accepted them as women in those days. 60s, And then my generation came up and we were like, we're not doing that anymore. And when I first started, there was not that many of us. Elaine Boozler, there was a handful. There was not that many of us. And little by little, now there's a lot. And I like to think that, hopefully I, laid the groundwork a little bit for these women. And now there's a lot of women feeling very free to talk about whatever they feel like talking about. But in my day, if there was a lineup at any of the clubs, they would only put one woman on. They would not put more than one woman on a lineup. They'd have male, 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 female, male. I don't know why, but that's the way it was. So it was hard because as a comic, you need stage time. And when there's not that many slots available. My feeling was always that I was not going to be sour grapes. I was always going to, I always felt like I'm going to be so good they cannot deny me.
Right.
That's what my goal was. I was going to be so good. And I would hear all these people kvetching and complaining. I was like, I'm not going there. I'm just going to focus on, showing up, doing good work.
Yes.
And that's how it goes.
Do you ever feel like you want to go back to do stand-up?
No.
Yeah, no, I hear from a lot of people said, like Eddie Murphy said that, says it's
so hard.
It's just too hard.
It's so hard and so stressful.
It's like there's no easy way to slip back in.
No. And what happened to me is I did it for so long and, very successfully, but it stopped being creatively interesting to me.
Yes.
I figured it out. I just stopped being creatively interesting. So to do something that difficult, which is not creatively interesting, then it's just money. And I don't like to,
Yeah. I did it. I went back. I tried it. I said, I'm going to try to do it. I did it for like 6 months at the smaller clubs back in the 80s. Like not Catch. I never did that. I wasn't good enough to do Catch, but I did Good Times. A few of those
Good Times, yeah.
Yeah, a few of those smaller clubs, And I was like, I was funny, but I remember the silence.
Silence is so loud.
When you do a bit and it doesn't work,
It's brutal.
And it was brutal. And I said, and I was fighting and through it, but I said, I'm going to do this. But the thing that bothered me the most, maybe I'm making excuses, I couldn't stand hanging out with all these comics.
Well.
They're so depressing.
A lot of them are.
And they never, ever laugh.
Yeah, the comics
if
don't
you say
laugh.
something funny, they'll go, that's funny.
No, that's funny, yeah.
They won't laugh.
Yeah, you got to find your group. But yeah, and when they're rejecting you, when they're silent, they're rejecting you. You're not playing a part. They're rejecting you.
Yes.
It's so deep.
Yeah, and I remember talking to Chris, not back then, but after, but then I went back, I got a play, and I just said, you know what, that's not me.
That's more your thing.
This is my thing. My thing is characters and do stage.
Right.
And then I remember years later, I was talking to Chris Rock about it. Who
I started with. Chris and I started together.
Wow. And Chris is just brilliant.
Yeah.
And I said to him once, we were doing a movie together, and he said, I told him about the silence. And he goes, once you're not afraid of the silence, that's you got to get your legs under you.
Yeah.
He said, just don't be afraid of the silence. Once you make the silence your friend, then you don't give a shit about anything. Just Who gives a shit? Just say it, and then go move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
And I was like, man, that was hard, Chris. I'm telling you right now for me. And he goes, yeah, well, you were new, But I never forgot
It takes
that.
a long time to be a good comic, a really long time.
Yeah, they say minimum 7 years.
Yeah.
To be really good.
Yeah, and it's not just to be it's to figure out who you are on stage.
Right.
And you need to have a consistent persona. It's got to be consistent, and audiences need to know who you are as a comic. And it takes a long time to figure that out. That's why you just got to stage time. Just get up and do it. You can't do it in front of your friends. You can't do it in the mirror in the bathroom. You need strangers in the audience.
Yes, you can't do it with your friends. People go, I should do comedy. I go, why?
Yeah.
When I'm with my family.
Yeah. I killed at my brother's wedding when I gave a toast.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's not it.
Yeah.
No, it's strangers who paid their money to come in, and you have to make them laugh.
Right.
They don't know you. They don't know anything. Sure, when I speak about my sister and her habits, all my family knows about her.
That's right.
They're going to laugh.
That's right.
I mean, so it's just, I love stand-up comics. I mean, now I just love watching them. I love meeting them. I love talking to them. I love picking their mind. I love Bill Burr. Bill Burr's
very funny. Very funny.
He gets away with stuff that I go, anybody else does that, they're out.
Well, except Larry. Larry got away with so much.
Oh, Larry.
The entire show, Larry and I did a show last week in Austin. Like a theater, like a conversation with kind of a show. And we were talking about this. Curb was so politically incorrect.
Yes.
So politically incorrect. And he never got shit for it.
I don't understand that.
Like, for example, that fatwa season, he thought that they were going to come after him. Palestinian chicken, he thought the Jews were going to come after him. Denise handicapped, he thought the handicapped community was going to. I mean, but I think it's because he's equal opportunity offender.
Yeah, maybe that's why when he went to that place where they ate the Palestine with the chicken, and then his friend and he grabs his hat, he throws it down, he goes back
Marty
in,
Funkhauser.
and they all applaud.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
That's hilarious.
He never got any blowback. One time we got blowback, and I remember it because I was in the middle of doing press. I guess it was season 7. Where he took some medication and he's peeing like a racehorse.
Right.
And he's in the bathroom and he's peeing, and there's a splash up onto the picture of Jesus.
Yes, I remember.
And all hell broke loose of people saying he's urinating on Jesus. He was not urinating on Jesus. It was not what he was doing. It was a splash, and it was part of the storyline.
Right.
That was the only time that we ever got blowback.
And
only ever.
I mean, when he brought the person remember the thing at the table, there were survivors from the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, he's a survivor.
He was on the show.
He was on a show, Survivor.
Yeah.
It's like, what the?
Yeah. How he thinks of these things, I don't know. And the reason, look, he's a genius, and I don't say that lightly.
No, I believe that, yes.
Yeah. And for me, because I'm a comic, I would read, as you know, we only have outlines. We don't have a script.
When you told me that, I was like, you have no script.
No script, outline. But the outlines are very detailed because Larry's all about story.
Right.
It's all about moving the story
Just make sure
forward.
you get this and that. And
yeah.
This, yeah.
Sometimes there'll be a line written because it's necessary for story, whatever it is. I'm disgruntled, whatever it is. It's necessary for story. So, but other than that, there's no dialogue written. But I read the outlines in the beginning of the season, and I can't figure out how he got there. Because it's transcendent. That to me is what genius is. It's transcendent.
Yes.
You can't, I don't know how Mozart heard what Mozart heard.
It's something that comes in you. It just flows in you.
Yeah.
You don't know. In fact, after you do it, I'm sure you and Larry and a lot of people, I know myself, I'll look at something I've written. I go, I wrote this?
Yeah.
Did I write that? Wow. When did
Well, people say, what were you thinking when I don't know. I was in the zone. I was in the zone. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's a great place to be. That's my most fun place to be.
That's sometimes I'm writing a movie and I'm just and my fingers are just flying and I'm laughing and I'm going, this is cheating. I'm cheating right now. Like, I don't know where this is coming from.
Well, I used to feel that on stage sometimes. I would feel like God was just sending me lines. I would come up with stuff. I was like, where did that? I had no idea where it was coming
Yeah,
from.
you know what it is, Susie? It's the perfect actor cast in the perfect role, and the writers just see you, and you meld with everybody in it.
Well, one of Larry's geniuses, I think, is casting.
Yes.
You know, when he would audition all of the small parts, not post-COVID, then everything changed and it was all on Zoom and that
Yeah,
was scrappy.
right.
But before that, he would audition with improvise with every actor who would come in to read.
Even small parts.
Oh yeah, yeah. So he would know if this was a person, and the way that he would do the auditions is, I mean, the casting director Allison Jones. I don't know if you know her; she's terrific. She would, cull down obviously, but he would give them a piece of paper with a scene on it, but it wouldn't be the real scene that we were actually going to do in the show. It would be some other scene because he didn't want to give away the scene. Like if you came on as a guest star, you wouldn't get the outline. You'd show up on set and he would say, okay, Chazz, this is the scene. You're going to come to my house and you're going to want to sue me because I, fucked up your lawn or whatever,
Yeah, right,
whatever it is. But you wouldn't get the outline because he doesn't want you coming up with stuff ahead of time. He wants you in the moment.
He wants me in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would get the outlines, but that was different.
Oh, so the people who just came in would not get.
No.
Oh, I wouldn't mind. I love that.
That's cool. Isn't it fun?
I think it's fun. Some people would just be, I can't do this, but I would love to do.
There were certain actors. He hired a lot of comics, so comics are good with that.
Comics are great.
But there were certain actors who were not that good.
Really?
Not all actors can improvise.
Not all.
They need the words. They need the words.
Improvising is the best.
Yeah. If you have an affinity for it.
Yes.
But if you're just an actor who's used to give me the words.
Give me the words. Yeah. Yeah.
It's different.
And you don't have to say who it was, but was there ever an actor they fired because they couldn't do it?
Not that I could think of.
Oh,
It might
okay.
have been, but
So
I
the
can't
casting
think.
was pretty-
You know what? It's a lot is done in editing. When you're improvising a show, there's so much done in editing because you have to.
Right.
Because it's not a page a minute. We don't know what it is. So we just, the edit, that's why we shoot a lot of coverage.
And then
because
you put it together.
Yeah, the editors do a lot. Steve Rash, who was our editor, was brilliant.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, the show, but you know what's funny? I see glimpses, I shouldn't say glimpses. I see a lot of Curb in Seinfeld.
Well, sure, it's Larry's brain.
It's Larry's brain,
Yes.
and I'll see that. I go, different, but.
Yeah, different. I think that, he did Seinfeld for, what was it, 7
7 years.
seasons, something. And I think Curb was very freeing for him because one was NBC, one was HBO, so very different there.
So he was able to really let
Really
go.
stretch and then it was improvised. And you couldn't improvise Seinfeld because it was multi-camera in front of a live audience. You can't
That's
improvise
true.
that.
That's true. Did he ever, he never regretted that he left Seinfeld after 7 years.
No.
He just felt
Especially
there was
after the
time.
syndication rights were sold.
Oh yeah, then it's like, what do I got to worry about now, right?
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah, but I got to tell you, him and Jerry were the perfect blend for a show on network television.
They complimented each other.
Yeah.
But the fact that they ever let him run that show was amazing because he had no track record. You know how the networks are.
Yeah.
They have a list of people that are allowed to run your show.
Right.
And he was not on that list.
Exactly.
Somebody fought for him. That so easily could not have happened.
Yeah, I remember in the very beginning, because I'm a fanatic with Curb Your Enthusiasm and Seinfeld. I watched every night. So I was reading about behind the scenes things, and I think Larry was talking about it once on that because he hated notes.
Wouldn't take notes.
He wouldn't take notes. It was driving him crazy. And then one time he happened to be there. I was reading and it said that they couldn't solve a problem. And Larry came in and solved it. And after that moment, they just left him alone after that.
But it's another thing, very unusual not to take notes.
Take notes. No
these
notes.
are your bosses. These are, this is network television is you selling soap. I mean, you got sponsors.
I know, but they very rare does, I shouldn't say this, but sometimes you get a producer who's really smart.
Yeah.
But other than,
or not even a producer, a network executive.
A network executive. Yeah. Sometimes. But because they're always thinking of not the work, they're thinking of other things.
And they're scared.
They're scared.
They're scared of
scared.
their jobs.
They're scared of their jobs, yeah.
So there was apparently one executive that fought for Seinfeld,
Yes.
and then it stayed on.
Yeah, I mean, they're scared of their job because they can only get fired for saying yes. They can't get fired for saying no.
Right. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. But once they say yes to something and it fails, they get fired.
And then, of course, nobody's secure in that world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've done pilots and they come in and they give you notes and you feel like they're giving you notes just to justify their jobs. They don't
Yes.
know comedy. They don't know drama.
They don't know.
They don't know shit.
No, they don't know shit.
And they
no.
just want to justify their position. So they give you a note and it's usually crap.
Yeah, I mean, I did a pilot with a wonderful comic. He's a good friend of mine, Chris DiStefano.
Oh, I love Chris.
Chris is funny
Chris is
as shit.
fantastic.
And so funny. And I played his father in this bit.
That's great casting. I like you
Yeah,
two together.
it was really but he really took a lot of notes from. It was his first kind of break.
So he had to. He didn't have any power.
He had to, but I was saying because I said, Chris, just let us be you and me. We could do, but we couldn't do it, and it didn't work. I mean, I thought it was funny, but it could have been a lot better if they would have just
Loosened up. Yeah.
loosen up and let us go. So.
Then once we did Curb, 0 notes. HBO never gave a note.
Never.
Never. They would get the outlines. There was only one time that I was like, all right, he's gone too far.
He crossed the line.
He crossed the line, but it worked anyway. So I guess I was wrong, but they never said a word. And that one time was when I guess it was season 3, I think. And he was talking about this little boy and how big his penis was. And I was like, all right, you've gone too far now on that. I don't like anything about kids, you know.
Right.
But that's me as
And
a
they
mother.
didn't, and they didn't.
It was
say
fine. It all worked out. It was funny. It worked out.
It's just funny.
He's calling the kid Uncle Milty.
Oh, of course, Milton Berle. I was at an event let me tell you quickly. I was at an event with Milton Berle, George Burns, and Tommy Lasorda, and all these baseball players. It was an event. It was a Friars Club, in L.A. And Milton Berle gets up there and he goes, he says to Darryl Strawberry, he goes, listen, he goes, I'm a legend, because he has a legend for having a big cock.
Yeah.
Milton Berle.
Yeah.
So he goes, but I hear you are a new sheriff in town or something like that. So he goes, Darryl, I heard that your dick is so big it's got its own heart and lungs. So everybody's laughing, right? So all of a sudden George Byrne goes, let's have a cock off. So Strawberry tells Darryl to come up there, and Milton is up there, and he goes, all right, you guys lay it on the table, lay it on and all of a sudden George Burns goes, I can't do George Burns. He's got a cigar in his mouth. He goes, go ahead, Milty, just take out enough to win. Well, the place just was hysterical.
Yeah.
But those old comics are like,
A lot of them were great.
you know what's funny about comics, Susie? George Burns, Milton Berle, and
Jack Benny.
You see them getting on stage, and somebody's got to help them up.
Yeah.
And they're like this. They get behind that mic. All of a sudden, it's like, so. And then after they finish it, it's like.
And George Burns, at 99, he was still performing.
Yes.
And that's what I heard about him. But I saw, when he was into his 90s, I saw Henny Youngman many times.
Yeah.
Because I was a New York friar, and we used to
Right.
do these benefits together, and he would
Right.
have cue cards.
Right.
But the delivery was, take my wife, please. And he was hilarious.
That muscle just goes boom.
Yeah.
And then it goes back down again.
Yeah.
There was a bit on there, because Larry puts these things out that resonates with people.
Yeah.
He's
He's brilliant at that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
A middler.
Oh,
What
at a
is
dinner
middler?
party.
At a dinner party, you're not a middler. You can't sit there. What's a middler? I said, and then I'm watching, but he's right. If you're going to sit in the middle of a big table,
You better carry it.
you better
I know.
You better carry the table.
Because he's been at too many dinner parties where he's bored out of his mind because somebody is just telling some story. Like Richard Kind, who's a brilliant actor, Richard Kind,
Yes.
was a horrible middle. Not him, the character, Cousin Andy, was a horrible middle at my dinner party.
Really?
Yeah. So that's then he decided that he had to change seats with him.
Right, because if you have a middler at the end, just those people there
Yeah.
are talking, so are you a middler?
I'm a good middle.
You're a middle.
I'm a very good middle.
You're a middle.
I'm a good. But Larry's a good middle.
Larry's
a great middle.
Yeah, I'm a great middle.
I bet you're a great
I'm
middle.
a good middle, yeah.
We're performers.
Yeah, you have to engage the table, right.
And also know when you're not. There's nothing wrong with not being a good middler. Just know that you're not.
You know what's the worst thing? Susie, this is the worst thing as a director. When you direct a huge star and he thinks he's funny, but he's not.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because he'll come out with something and people start laughing. And you can tell
That's
the laughing.
narcissism, though, Chazz. That's just the narcissism.
But they're not funny.
Yeah. I've experienced that many times.
Have you had that?
Oh, yeah, many times. Especially when you're a comic. People tend to want to be funny around you.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? Leave it to the professionals.
It's like, you're not funny. You're not, like we were talking about Robin. Like, I'm a great storyteller. I am.
You are. And that's what you do for a living.
Yes. I get up there and I do characters and I tell stories, right? Okay. So Bobby Moresco, who's a great director
Yeah.
and writer, he wrote Crash and $1 Million Baby.
Right. I know who he is.
You know Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby grew up in, Hell's Kitchen. Just like me, I grew up in Bronx, he grew up in Hell's Kitchen. So we have funny Bronx Hell's Kitchen stories.
Right.
But he's a wonderful storyteller, and the way he does it, the way he crafts it like. So we're at this big party, big table, and he's in the middle, and I'm on the other side middle. We're going back and forth. He's doing one, then I go one. And the people are just rolling. Then all of a sudden, this guy goes, oh, wait, I got it. So I'm 13 years old, and he starts off, and the whole table, you could feel
Feel
like
it going down, the
right?
energy.
And I just turned to him and I go, hey, you're in the fucking World Series of storytellers. Shut the fuck up and don't say nothing.
What Larry's done now, he's given you a thing to say, you're not a middler.
You're not yes, you're not a, so Larry gave me, you're not a middler, shut the fuck up.
Right.
But it was just like, you know how it is when you're telling a story to somebody else. When I told you that story about Robin Williams, before Robin got there, I was the middler and I was controlling the table. Right? Robin got there.
Robin is a middler hog.
So then Robin got there. He sat in the middle and started talking, and I just knew my place. I said,
Right.
Let
Time
it go.
to step back.
I stepped back, and Robin took over, and he was hysterical. But I didn't go, I got to compete now with you.
But don't you find that most people are so desperate for attention?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I remember we did a movie, and I was I was writing on the film. I was rewriting, and the star is in the room, and the director's going, yeah, and the star's going, yeah. What about if I do this and I do this, and I'm sitting right there because I'm working with the director, and he's going, yes, funny. Oh, that's good. And I'm saying to myself, this sucks. What is he? And I didn't say a word. And I said, and the director's a big director who I won't name. And then he walks out, the star. And I said, all due respect, I said, that stuff, you want me to write some of that? That's not funny. He goes, no, that sucks.
It was humoring him.
Yeah. I go, oh. He goes, it sucked. It was terrible. He goes, you just say it. Let him feel.
Yeah.
But I never forgot that.
That's hilarious.
But the way he said, he goes, that sucks.
Yeah.
I said, oh, I don't have to write that? He goes, no, don't worry about it.
But there's so many things from Curb that are like that. The middler, the stop and chat, the stop and cut.
What is stop and chat? What's that?
Stop and chat is when you're walking down the street and you see somebody, you're like, hey, and you keep on walking, but they want to stop and chat. They want to have a cut. He has so many things like that, Larry. And the whole thing about Curb is when you watch it, it's all about social mores,
Right.
you know, about how people behave. And the majority of time, even though his behavior is wrong, he's right.
He's right.
He's right. He's almost always morally and ethically right.
Right. Remember the guy next door? He said, "No, I got to go see him. His father died."
Yeah.
So he walked over. He says, so sorry about your father." He says,
So my father-in-law.
Father-in-law. He goes,
Oh,
"What?"
not so bad.
And Larry goes, yeah.
He's right.
Right. But the way he did it, he went, "Well, nah." And the guy went, "What?" It's not your father.
I mean, he's almost always right. Now, my character doesn't think so, but I do.
So, I mean, after Curb, I mean, obviously, when would you like to do another show? Another
I
series?
love to work.
So you like to work?
I love to
Okay.
work. I like being on set. I like the crew. I like hanging out.
Yeah.
I'm never in my trailer. I'm always on set. I like the camaraderie and the community of production. I
Right.
love it.
What would you say was your first kind of big break into show business, where you felt, hey, I could do this for a living? Whether it was stand up,
Well, it was stand up because
Yes.
I did stand up for so many years. I
Right.
remember, it was 1984, and I was the old Caroline's that used to be on 8th Avenue. Do
Yeah.
you remember that
Yeah,
room?
yeah,
It was
I
a
remember
great
that place.
room, and I was opening for Gilbert Gottfried, who was the funniest
Funny guy.
ever.
Dirty.
Oh God, one of my dearest friends.
Yeah.
And it's very sad that he's no longer with us. And I was in the Village, and at the time they used to have these big posters, and there was a big poster of Gilbert's face, and then it said underneath, "Opening act Susie Essman." And I was like, I'm really in show business. My name is on the poster. I guess I'm really doing this. I've been doing it for about 6 months, and it was like
6 months.
Wow, I was like, I'm a comic now,
Mm.
and then there was no one thing.
Yes.
It was just so many different
Right.
things.
But you would say that your break to national
Was Curb.
was Curb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's definitely Curb. And it was in the beginning, we were so under the radar. It was season 3, anecdotally, that I noticed people stop me on the street, in New York.
When
'cause I
did
live
it
in New
hit?
York.
What, did it hit the first year?
No, it was very under the radar. And again, if this was network, they would have canceled it. But it was HBO, so they just let it breathe, which was a nice thing, And by season 3, it was getting the numbers. The first 2 seasons, nobody was watching us except comics, pretty much, and people who were super tuned in and kind of
Yeah.
hip. And then it just kind of took off. Then it took off, and then he in the beginning, as I said, I was a day player. I never knew. Season 2, I was in 2 episodes, so I didn't know. And then Larry just kept on writing more and more and more. And Larry and I have such a kind of dialogue of the unconscious going, like we've never discussed the character of the relationship. Never discussed it. We
Now-
just kind of do it.
Is it Larry's way and that's it?
It's Larry's vision.
It's Larry's vision.
It's Larry's vision. And so I always feel as though I'm there to further along
Yes, yeah.
his vision. Sometimes there are times when I want to do something different. I'll do something. He'll say, don't do it that way. Do it this. And I'll be like, well, let me do a couple of takes my way, and then I'll do a couple of takes your way. And he's fine with that.
Okay.
He's not rigid at all.
Yeah.
And he has said that with everybody improvising, he said, I don't know exactly what it is, but let's say 97% of the time, the actors come up with something he never could have thought of and is better than what he would have thought of. 3% of the time, he wishes he had written it. And every now and then you get a dud of an actor who's not coming up with the goods. Not the regulars, not
the
us
regulars.
guys.
Yeah, not the regulars.
And most of the guest stars are great, but every now and then there's a
yeah,
dud.
I mean, all you guys were great. I mean, Vince Vaughn was
Oh,
great.
Vince is a great improviser.
Yeah.
I had no idea
Yeah.
what a great improviser he is.
He is, right. And I really liked Richard Lewis.
Oh, Richie.
When I saw Richard the first time I saw him, I thought he was hysterical, walking, putting his hand through his hair. My psychiatrist, he
Yeah.
was hysterical.
He was a brilliant comic, and
Yeah.
we miss him
Yeah,
tremendously.
yeah. He was, I mean, you had these great comic minds, man. I mean, just.
I'll tell you something about Richard. That's funny. Richard used to prepare jokes, which would drive Larry crazy. Because you're not supposed to do that. You're in the scene. You're talking. You're listening.
Right.
It's like if I came here right now and I had pre-prepared bits I wanted to do, you know, just throwing them. That's what he used to do all the time, and it used to drive us all crazy.
So he had a bit, and he would use it.
So Larry would get to the point where Larry would be like, all right, tell the joke. Go ahead, do the joke. And then he would end up cutting it.
Right. Just do it, but let me get rid of this thing. Wow.
Yeah, here's a special person.
Richard Lewis? Yeah.
He was special.
Him and Larry were very close, I heard.
Well, you know, they met when they were like 12 in sleepaway camp, and they hated each other.
Oh, my God.
And then they met again many years later at the bar at the Improv on 44th Street. And they looked at each other like, wait a minute, I know you.
Yeah.
And they realized they were friends from camp, and they hated each other. And then they were best friends from that moment on. They were best friends. Born in the same hospital 3 days apart in Brooklyn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, wow. That's
it's a real
line
friendship.
Larry said was a beautiful line. He said, "I hate him so much for making me cry."
Yeah. We were all devastated when he died. We really
Well,
were.
they expected it, but right, they knew.
No, you know, he had Parkinson's and was clearly not, he was failing, but he died of a heart attack.
Oh, okay.
Which, you know, was quite sudden.
Oh,
None of
so
us were
nobody
expecting that. Yeah, Parkinson's is
Was that while you were shooting that happened?
It was right after we finished, and we had to do reshoots.
Yeah.
He loved doing the show so much. And it was like a week or two after we did the final reshoot, and that was when he died. And I just felt like he was just staying alive to do the reshoots and finish this last season. Wow. That's what it felt like. He was, I mean, you could see on camera the past few seasons, he was not well.
It was not, yeah.
But unfortunately, what Parkinson's done, and I know a lot about it because my brother has it, the brain is fine.
Yeah.
And I'd be in a scene with him or whatever, and I'd see the brain firing, but he couldn't get the words out. It's a motor skills, you know.
Yeah.
Couldn't get the word, and it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, but he left a great a legacy of very funny stuff.
He was a character.
Now, who's Larry? Who's your favorite comics?
My favorite comics now?
Now.
Oh, I don't really follow comedy.
Yeah. I know.
I watch drama.
I always say Bill Burr's.
Bill's great. He's a great comic.
Quinn.
Colin and I started together. When I started at the comic strip, Colin was the bartender.
Yeah.
He hadn't even done stand-up yet.
And he's different than anybody else.
Totally original.
See,
somebody like Colin I love because he's completely original. He's who he is and completely original.
You know what I said to him was, I had him on the show, and I said, Colin, when you write something and the audience doesn't laugh, do you say, well, that's not funny? He goes, no, it's funny. If I write, he goes, no. He's like, so he was like, no, if I think it's funny, it's funny. And I'm like, oh, okay.
You know, Colin was one of these people, like Larry and like Gilbert.
Yes.
That they'd go up on stage and die a death. But they were so funny for the comics to watch while they were dying.
Right.
We would be in the back of the room laughing hysterically watching them because they died in a way that was like hilarious.
They were like comics.
Yeah, exactly. Colin was one of those. I used to love to watch him die.
And he's so funny, but if he thinks it's funny, he goes, no, I'll tell you what's funny.
He commits.
I'm going to tell you what's funny.
He would go up with his yellow pad, you know, so would Lewis. They would go up with the pad.
Right.
And just try, you know, try all their premises.
Yes.
Those days are over.
Yeah. Oh, and of course, Dave Chappelle.
Chappelle is very, very
funny.
I thought you were going to say Dave Attell, who's also hilariously funny.
You know what? I never knew really Dave Attell.
Hilarious.
But I saw him at the Comedy Cellar.
Yeah.
And I was like, I heard of this guy's name, but he got up there very unassuming with his baseball cap.
Looks like a terrorist.
But brilliantly funny.
Brilliant joke writer. He's a brilliant
joke writer. I was like, oh, shit. This guy's funny, man.
You know, there's all different, like somebody like Attell. I was never a great joke writer. As I said, I was all about connection. I knew how to connect to an audience. Attell knows his way around a joke. Rodney was Dave Dangerfield. Yeah. Rodney was one of the greatest joke writers that ever lived.
Exactly.
And he used to come into Catch a Rising Star, and he would sit with all of us at the bar, and he'd be like, Essie, come here, go over your material. Yeah. And he would say, all right, take this word out. Take this, put this word there. He knew how to craft a joke. Attell's like Rodney in that way. He knows how to craft a joke.
I said to Chris Rock once, I said, Chris.
He's a good joke writer.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
I said to Chris, I said, who's the hardest comic to follow. I said, who do you think? And you wouldn't believe the person he said. Who do you think he said?
No idea.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Well, Rodney was hard to follow.
He said he's extremely hard. He goes, he's very hard because he's a machine gun. Bam,
Yeah,
bam,
yeah,
bam.
that rhythm was
He goes,
hard
he has
to
a
follow.
rhythm that the audience just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And he goes,
He's
and guys
relentless.
like me, and Eddie Murphy and all these other guys, even Robin Williams, we have a different rhythm.
Different rhythm, yeah.
But to follow his rhythm was very difficult, he said.
Rodney would come in to Catch a Rising Star in his pajamas, sometimes just like a bathrobe with nothing on underneath, because he lived across the street. He was such a character, but he loved comedians, and he would always give you the time. He would call me up, go over material, work on material with me. He was very loving to comics.
Now, did he? Well, you opened up Dangerfield's.
Yeah.
Did he? I never asked anybody this question. Did he workshop those jokes? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
he did.
That's why he would come into the club. So if he was going to go on Carson or whoever, he would come in and work. He worked very, very hard. People don't realize how hard comics work.
Oh man.
And, that's
man.
what I was saying. When I was a kid, I thought, oh, they just do this. I didn't realize how much it took to get 5 minutes together,
Yeah, but comics. The thing about comics, the comic mind, is they're just so funny. Everything they find humor, in anything that's.
Right, but to put the bit together
But to put the bit together is different.
Takes
Yeah.
its rhythm, its timing, its its
Yeah.
flow. It's a lot of things.
I remember I was having lunch. We did a movie together, me and Chris, and John Jr. just got killed, and we were talking about it, I was like, I said, Jesus, I said, he's a young, handsome man. Who knows? He could have been president one day. And I said, I mean, all that money, could you hire a pilot? Just have a pilot with you? This guy's worth $1 billion. He goes, Chazz, all he had to do is walk across the street. There's an airport with his fucking name on it. But it was like you just can't.
Yeah,
all you had to do is walk across the street and we're eating
Yeah.
the airport with his fucking name on it. And I was like,
yeah,
what a great fucking joke.
yeah.
And he goes, Chazz, when John died, we all got a little bit cuter.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, shit like that.
That's another thing about comedy. It's like there's no such thing as too soon.
Yeah.
There's an irreverence that you have to. When I see comics that are too schmaltzy, I don't like that.
Too schmaltzy.
Yeah, you got to have irreverence and you got to have that edge in order to really be funny.
Yes, and who said that? Somebody said that.
It's like to me when I was growing up, who was the funniest of them all?
Oh,
Rickles.
Rickles. Oh, Rickles.
I mean, just brilliantly and took no prisoners.
No prisoners. The first time I met him, I'm at. No, it wasn't Frank. No, it wasn't. And not to drop names, I got to know Frank Sinatra. It wasn't at his house. It was at.
That's a good. If you're going to drop a name, that's
a
good
good
one.
name to drop. Tita Khan, and we were at Tita Khan's house at a dinner, and De Niro, I just hit with Bronx Tale, the movie.
Yeah.
And De Niro introduced me to everybody. So he brings me into Tita Khan's house, and all these stars are there, right? So he's going, oh, this is my friend. And Robert and Rickles, I never met him, walks over in the middle of all these people and says, Chazz Palminteri, where the fuck would you be without Robert De Niro? Just like that. And everybody started laughing. And I laughed because I felt like baptized or something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
But he didn't even meet me yet.
No, he was sharp as can be. Talk about quick. He was about as quick. And Frank loved him.
Loved
he
him.
was brutal to Frank.
Brutal, but loved him. I mean, he would say things to me, yo, Chazz, let me just tell you something. Frank wears a cross with nobody on it. You know what I mean? He goes, you want to know how big Frank is?
Yeah.
That's how big he is.
It's interesting to think, I was talking about political correctness. It's interesting if Rickles could be Rickles in this day and age.
But you know what? He was still, they never canceled him. I think he was grandfathered in that you're allowed that.
Well, they never canceled Larry either. It was never canceled. This whole, I don't even want to get started on that, but
Yeah.
comedy, once you start regulating comedy,
Forget
you're
it.
in
It's
big
the word.
trouble.
You're in big trouble, yeah.
Because the nature of comedy is to be subversive, and irreverent. That's the nature of it. Otherwise, what are you going to have? What do you have in totalitarian regimes? You got a clown and a juggler or a mime?
Yes.
You know, you're not allowed to criticize.
That's right.
You're not allowed, you know?
Yeah, how could you? And you're absolutely right, Susie. Comedy has to be just like I've always said. Look, there's some movies that I always say free speech. I might not like what you say, but I'm not going to tell you can't say it.
That's right. So unless, you know, except for shouting fire in a crowded theater,
Yes.
you know, we should all be able to say whatever we want to say.
Yeah, and I've always said that.
And I think that the cancel culture, I mean, look, there are extremes. You talk about a rapist like Harvey Weinstein. Okay, that's a different story.
Right.
Than, you know, somebody who says something off color in front of it's a completely different
who
thing.
really their heart didn't mean that. It
Right.
was just like what's his name, Kramer, when he did stand up, and they kind of, you know what, from what I don't know him,
I don't know the whole situation, but
right?
yeah.
But they said that he's not a racist at all, not at all.
I think he regrets that. I think what happened to him is, and I'm not friends with him. I don't know him.
Right.
But as a comic watching that, we're all always pushing the envelope. That's
Yes.
what we do as comedians. And I think he pushed it too far and he got caught.
Yeah.
Now, I've had that situation on stage where I'm going a little too far and I feel this little thing crawling up my spine, like pull back.
Pull back.
But what worries me now is, how do you grow as a comic if you can't push the envelope?
You have to push.
You
it.
have to push the envelope. Otherwise, you don't know where the line is.
You don't know where the top is till you go over it.
That's right.
And then you go, oh, okay.
And it used to be in the clubs, we were down and dirty, smoky, you know, low ceilings. Nobody's recording, nobody's tweeting, nobody's anything. And you could say whatever you wanted. And you discovered what that, I crossed the line. Okay, I realized that. You discovered what the line was.
Right.
What got him in trouble is somebody recorded it.
Yeah, yeah.
We've all pushed the envelope. We've all
Everybody
done that.
does. We all push the envelope. You know, and people who say you have to be this hard. You know, I know people who say, you know, they go Jerry Seinfeld is a stand-up comic. They go, he's funny, but he's. And I go, hey man, Jerry does clean jokes and is really funny.
And he's a very, very well crafted.
And I said,
he knows how to.
He has a
joke.
craft, so. I don't know what you're saying. I mean, look, I love, like I always said, Pryor was the greatest, but you got to respect guys who could write like that and be funny like that.
And he works very hard at it. He
Yes.
sits down every day
and
and he writes.
I always said, man, no, Steinfeld is one of the best, one of the greats. I said that. I said different, but still one of the greats.
Yeah. My style is more of a Pryor style.
Yes,
you know,
mine is too.
But
I admire what he does.
Well, it's like acting. Everybody crafts
Right.
it differently. You know, it's like that story when they were making Marathon Man. You know, and Dustin Hoffman is like, you know, coming in bedraggled, hadn't slept all night, and he's all method. And Laurence Olivier says something to him like, "Why don't you just learn how to act, man?" You know,
he goes. He stayed up 4 days. And,
yes.
Why don't you just act? Yeah, and you wonder. Would it have been that much different or better? I don't know.
Everybody has. I don't judge anybody's.
But maybe he
method.
needed to go there. Maybe Dustin,
he did. He's a great actor.
And he's a great actor. But maybe Dustin needed to go there.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Who were the actors when you were growing up? Who did you love?
Oh, well, I always loved Marlon Brando.
Wow. What's not to love?
Yeah, Brando. I remember on TV, I didn't see it in the theater, but I remember seeing On the Waterfront.
Yeah.
And I remember the acting in that with Lee J. Cobb and all these people. I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And I remember Brando walking at the very end when he got beat up. And,
Oh, yeah.
and he said they asked him, what were your metaphor, what were you thinking of? And he talked about Christ walking when he had the cross on his, and I was like, then when I see it, I go, yeah.
Yeah.
I see that.
I just read recently he almost did not take that part.
Really?
Because of Kazan. He didn't like the fact that Kazan had named names.
And named names, yeah. And he hated acting, Brando.
I know.
Hated it. He did it because of the money.
But he was so damn good.
He was so damn good. But he was one of those once in a generation. And of course, De Niro, I always admired. I remember seeing him in Bang the Drum Slowly, and I walked out of the theater, and then there was Mean Streets. playing too. And I went, oh, shit, I want to go see that. I went right back in to watch Mean Streets. And I was like, I couldn't believe it was the same guy.
Yeah.
And then years later, here am I, he plays my father and I'm acting with him. So
Isn't that a nice thing that you get? You
Yeah.
know, I felt that way about Mel Brooks when he was on a season of Curb.
yeah.
5 years old, I'm standing up on the kitchen table doing the 2,000-Year-Old Man album, both parts, Carl and Mel. And then I get to, that, and sometimes I would be on stage and I would say something and it would be like, oh shit, that's Mel's rhythm. It was so ingrained in me. And then I get to work with him. It's a thrilling
That's a
thing in this
thrill.
business
That's a
that you get to
thrill.
do that.
Susie, my God, we're on. You've just been great. I mean, is there anything you want to add? Are you going to be doing something? Or
I had things I can't talk. I got some development.
I'd rather
and
not.
stuff. Yeah.
Me too. I'm like that. I hate to talk about things that could happen.
We say that in Yiddish. It's the kinahara, which is poo, poo, poo. It's the evil eye. You don't want to.
Yeah, Italians have that too.
Jinx
The
thing.
evil eye.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. You want to talk about how? I'll tell you quickly. My Sicilians. I was 13 years old, and my grandmother said, "Go in there, give me some ice cubes." And I opened up the thing to get ice cubes. And back then they had the ice cubes. You had to pull the thing.
Yeah, those things, right.
And I grabbed the thing to pull it, and my grandmother said, "Don't touch that." And I was like, "What happened?" She goes, "Don't touch this one. Just get another one." And I looked, and I said, "What the hell?" And I see all these ice cubes with little pieces of paper sticking out of them. I said, "What the hell?" And I just put it away. I was like 12, 13, and I took the other one. I opened it up. Then I went upstairs because we lived on top of my grandmother. And I said, "Hey, Ma, what's with Grandma?" She goes, "What?" I go, "She told me to get ice." I grabbed this thing, and she goes, "You didn't touch the one with the paper." I'm like,
What was it?
I go, "No, what's with that?" She goes, "Oh, that's her father. Her father would have vendettas. When he had a vendetta against somebody, he would write their name down and put it in the water and make a new ice cube. So that means their life is frozen.
Ice. Yeah, they're iced.
They're iced, but their life, they can never get ahead after that.
That's so literal.
Wherever they are, they're frozen."
Wow.
And I was like, man, this family's nuts.
Yes.
Imagine that. Well, let me just tell you, it's been great, and you're just fabulous.
Thank
you're
you, Chazz.
hysterically,
So are
you're
you.
funny, you're brilliantly funny. Seriously, I love the show, and I can always, it'll come back on, and I hope I get a chance to watch it again. But Susie Essman, really, just a talent that you cannot believe. Susie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chazz.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. See you next week, Monday night.
Morning.
All right. See you next week, Monday morning.